FAMU's been unbeatable at Bragg until they ran into Mississippi Valley State. Rattler Nation, we got some conversations to have, and it starts with one question I need the answer to. Oh, yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me. Make a Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Go to FanDuel.com to get started. And if you're new to FanDuel, put down get $150 back in bonus bets if you put down a $5 bet that wins. All you have to do is go to FanDuel.com to make every moment more. There's so much from this weekend that we couldn't fit it into one episode. Thank you for sticking with me, rocking with me, checking out the afternoon session that we do on Mondays. Come right back Tuesday morning, maybe on your way to work, maybe you're on your way back from work now, on your way to work. Go ahead and check out that Tuesday episode because we're going to get into the things we couldn't fit into today's episode. We'll wrap up Monday with a look at Selection Sunday. Division II playoffs start this weekend. There's two HBCUs represented. Who are they? How did they get there? And who will they be playing? I got your answer for all three of those questions in segment 3. Segment 2, I will not discount what Chennis Berry did, or not even discount because no one's doing that. I will not forget or fail to mention what Chennis Berry did at Benedict College when speaking about what he's doing at South Carolina State, because I think that tells a large story about not only him as a coach, but then also that roster. But while we're talking about one coach's successes, I want to also talk about another coach's shortcomings. Before we get into James Colzie, let me give a shout out to Mississippi Valley State. I completely thought they were going to go winless this year. Not at the beginning of the year. You never predict that. You always think they'll get one. But as the season narrows down, you start going through the schedule, and it's like, okay, where are they going to get one? When they didn't beat Prairie View A&M, I didn't think that it was a chance they would win. I certainly didn't think that they would be the team to walk in, to brag, and beat FAMU and in this long home winning streak. Matter of fact, they actually ended their own road game losing streak. It's been a long time since Mississippi Valley State won a road game. So for you to have those two completely different paths, right? Like these are completely different trajectories to cross. It's something you never expected, and I don't think that you could have predicted. So I want to salute them. Coach Wade called this the greatest win of his career. So I want to make sure that I go ahead and highlight that. But I got a question. Rattler Nation, thank you for joining me. I've been on your case for the last week or so. I haven't been overly complimentary of the team. So when you tapped in today, you knew what you were getting into. And I'm glad that you came here. I got a question for you. Do you believe that the James Colzie hiring was a failure? That's not a rhetorical question. I know it may seem like hyperbole, but when I think about the process of hiring James Colzie, it was all about 2024. Now, I don't know what the decision makers did, but from the FAMU fans, was it a monolith? No, but I think it was a consensus. And this is something that I spoke about coming into the year. If you are hiring James Colzie for 2024, you made a mistake. However, we have to address the point that I'm going to say 90% of FAMU fans wanted James Colzie because James Colzie gave them the best chance to repeat. If you weren't part of that group, okay. But if you're going to sit here and act like that group doesn't exist, that's not true. So with that thought process, I have to wonder, is the hiring a failure? Because if you hired him for 2024, how did 2024 play out? You have the most losses since 2018, Willie Simmons' first year. Now, if you're me, I always expected him to prove whether or not he was the right coach in 2025, 2026, 2027. 2024 was never the year for James Colzie in my book. But the thing is, I'm asking the people who constantly told me continuity this, continuity that. James Colzie has to be the coach. You need to hire from within because that's how we're going to repeat as Celebration Bowl champions. That is off the table. It is not possible. Now that you know it's not happening, do you look at this hiring a tad bit different because of the criteria that it was approached with? That's a legitimate question that I want the answer to. It's not rhetorical. You can't tell me as I'm speaking it to you because I'm really talking to a camera right now. I know I done peeled the curtain back. I done gave you a secret. You ain't know that. But like I'm talking to this camera, but I want to read what you have to say because I think that there was way too much pressure placed on James Colzie in 2024. I don't think that it was necessarily fair to him. I've compared FAMU to Jackson State multiple times. But the biggest difference between James Colzie and TC Taylor is the situation they stepped into. Not with the rosters, not with the expectations, or excuse me, actually with the expectations. It's not the roster, it's not the management, it is the expectations. The difference between James Colzie and TC Taylor is that TC stepped into the head coaching role with room to grow. James Colzie stepped into the head coaching role with expectations of a championship year one. He was supposed to do what Chennis Berry did. And because he didn't, I want to know what the vibes are. And I may come off like I'm attacking. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think it was ever fair to put that amount of expectations on him. I don't. I think that there was a clearly heightened sense of self. I ain't gonna mince no words. I think some fans had a heightened sense of their team, had a heightened sense of, or a lower sense of the challenges that you were going to get from the overhaul you had to approach. Like you had to go through it. You lost a lot of key pieces. I think there was a little bit of denial in that. I know because I read my comments and I remember when I was saying these things. I think you can't deny the overhaul that happened. Because if you do deny that there was these changes in critical pieces, whether that was via the transfer portal, whether that was via graduation or a lack of eligibility, whatever, or expiring eligibility. I'm going to say lack of because they didn't fail. They're gone. They spent enough time in college. If you want to say that those things didn't play a part, then James Colzie just not a good coach because last year you won a Celebration Bowl. This year you're losing to Mississippi Valley State. I think that the roster played a big part in what happened. I think the fact that James Colzie was hired after early signing day played a big part. I think that 2025, 2026, when he's able to really get his guys in there, that's when we start having a conversation on whether or not this was the right guy to be the hired or to be the successor to Willie Simmons. But I asked this question today because you may wonder, how do you feel all of this and still ask this question? Because I need to know. For those who put the pressure on him to succeed in 2024, the fact that he didn't doesn't make the hiring a failure. Have you changed your expectation? What's the scenario? Losing to Mississippi Valley State is a tough pill to swallow. I've done it. I'm not too proud to admit it. I've done it. Not that I wasn't on the team or nothing, but I was a part of the fan base. Riddle me that, Batman. Riddle me that, Batman. This chair is going to be the death of me. Y'all hear it squeaking? But next season, Colzie gets a recruiting class. He gets to step in and sell them on his vision of what he wants to do, who he wants to be, how they want to operate. There's so many things that go into building a collegiate team that James Colzie, I don't think, had the best opportunity to deal with due to how long it took for the hiring to happen, due to the timing in which Willie Simmons left, right? Like there was a lot of things that did not work in James Colzie's favor. Do I think that it was a failure? I'll answer the question that I'm asking you. I do not believe that it was a failure. I think that this is a terrible loss. This is undeniably, it's funny because I said last week was the upset of the year, and I knew somebody would respond in the comments after this game and say, well, PV losing or PV knocking off FAMU ain't the upset of the year anymore. And they did. And that was funny. But to me, you got to give them time. To me, I know there was a little bit of expectation that felt like the consensus, not saying monolithic, but it was the consensus that James Colzie would produce a contender immediately and that he should be the coach because of Celebration Bowl hopes in 2024. I never liked that, so I will not judge him by that. But for those who did want him hired for that reason, what now? That's for y'all to answer. Now, as we push forward, one guy who did win the conference in his first year is Chennis Berry, but that's nothing new to him. He's been winning conferences for the last 3 years. Matter of fact, he hasn't lost a conference matchup since 2021. We got to break all of that down as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Our friends over at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate fan isn't just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to go through 7 straight losses and then bounce back with 2 straight victories and never hop off the bandwagon at any time. That's why me personally, I love the Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor of fan fuel because it's the energy shot made for super fans like you, like me, who will never quit on our team no matter what. The fans who are first in the parking lot, who are the last to leave, we see you. You know what gave me a little bit of energy? Watching South Carolina State get a pick 6 for the second week in a row. This time it was over Morgan State. That's what really gave me energy. 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big game or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. So go get the Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot. It's here and it's helping you to stay fueled throughout the season. Available on 5hourenergy.com, shipped nationwide. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day. Every day for your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On LSU. It's a lot of heat. Moscona is doing a phenomenal job. Matt Moscona, Locked On LSU, breaking down everything. Is Brian Kelly the right coach for the Fighting Tigers? You're going to have to ask Matt those questions. I ain't got them. But South Carolina State is your MEAC champion, and I really do feel like I can't leave out the part about Benedict College. I remember watching a Chennis Berry interview, and I don't even think he referenced Benedict College by name. I think he said his last school, his last stop, or his old school. He's all South Carolina State. But for me, you can't tell the story of Chennis Berry winning the MEAC in his first year without speaking about the fact that he was dominating the SIAC as well. In his last 2 years, he ran through that conference at Benedict. He ran through that conference. They didn't lose a game. They were dominating teams. They were clearly the best squad. He gets to South Carolina State, and they're clearly the best squad. What does that reflect? I would say what's the one common denominator, but there's a couple because you have coaches and you have players as well. But the largest common denominator is Chennis Berry. And it's a culture that he has set. And for him to be able to go from the Division II ranks to the FCS Division I, however you want to phrase it, to those ranks and not skip a beat speaks volumes. For Chennis Berry to go to Benedict College, win back-to-back SIAC championships, be the hottest commodity in Black college football coaching in 2024. Everybody wanted Chennis Berry. And if you didn't, you should be kicking yourself because he went from back-to-back SIAC championships to winning the MEAC in his first year because he's a winner, because he's a culture setter, because he's a guy that people galvanize around and want to play for. He's a guy who is dominant. He took a 1-2 win team and put him at 500 his first year. And that's the last time that he held up a trophy at the end of a season. The reason I believe that I needed to talk about this is because South Carolina State is obviously your MEAC champions, in case that wasn't already understood, because I didn't say it. We knew this was going to be the case after the North Carolina Central game. But the reason I feel the need to say this now is because I was on Twitter, or X. I was on social media, and I seen a tweet from Dedrick Starks. And the tweet said, basically, from Benedict to South Carolina State 3 times with the ring emoji. And when you really think about it, you realize a lot of people followed Chennis Berry. You realize how many 3-time champions are in that locker room? 2022, undefeated in conference play, wins the SIAC. 2023, undefeated in conference play, wins the SIAC. This year, through 4 games, they're undefeated in MEAC play, and they win the MEAC. This doesn't happen often. This doesn't. And to me, it's a testament because he brought so many guys from Benedict. For you to have, and I remember, I can't remember who it was, man. I think it might have been Kobe. But it was him and somebody else. And they was just like, not bad for some D2 guys. I just remember that video after that North Carolina Central win. And it stuck with me because you really start to think, man, they have a lot of key contributors who were at Benedict last year. Or they have a quarterback who wasn't at Benedict last year, but that's where he started at. And one of the larger conversations in HBCU athletics when it comes to football is the conversation about moving up a subdivision, right? Oh, you are so good at the HBCU level. Why would you want to go to play at the FBS? And I know that technically you're still at an HBCU, but you went from division to the FCS, and it's the same theory. It's the same theory that your competition is getting better, right? Like, you did all of this on the FCS. Why go FBS? You did all this on D2. Why go FCS? We don't really have those conversations because I think we fail to acknowledge the power dynamic between FCS and D2 because there's HBCUs at both, right? Like, that's how I feel. And I maybe even exaggerate the power gap. I could, but to me, there is a gap. The same way there is a gap between FBS and FCS. That exists, and it should be more of a conversation. But then again, when you have successes like South Carolina State, it's hard to have that conversation. When a guy like Caden High comes in and dominates the MEAC the same way he dominated the SIAC, when he's an explosive player like that, when Eric Phoenix comes in and he's balling out like it, and he's going to be your MEAC Offensive Player of the Year, it's a different conversation. Things are just different, right? Like, you have to be real about it. And to me, being real about it is acknowledging that this is not supposed to happen often. But when you have Chennis Berry, who recruits players who can play at any level, when you have a coach who can coach at any level, when you have all of these things, this is truly finding diamonds in the rough. It is, man. I don't think the coach going from D2 to D1 and succeeding is too rare. I think it happens because coaches move up a lot of times. But in general, it wasn't supposed to happen this fast. I'll tell you that. I have to break it down. Caden High, Jaden Broughton, Eric Phoenix, DeAndre Duhart. Like you have so many guys who weren't on this team last year. You recruited Ionaj Carter. You have so many guys, but at the same time, one thing I want to mention, because I think it'll be wrong to do that. There is a lot of attention, deservedly so, on the fact that Chennis Berry came from the D2 ranks to FCS, won a championship immediately. He has players who won a ring last year with him, some who even won back-to-back rings in 2022, 2023. But Coach Berry mentioned something that was very important. Coach Pugh did not leave the cupboard bare. He left you players like Aaron Smith, Justin Smith-Brown, Ashad Hall. These are key contributors, sack leaders, tackle leaders, second leading receiver. There was talent on this team. They ain't that far removed from a Celebration Bowl appearance. I don't know if any of these guys were there. Aaron Smith might have been. I think Smith might have been on that team. Now that I'm thinking about it. But I don't think Justin Smith Brown or Shot Hall. Shot Hall definitely wasn't. But the point is, this team has really stepped it up. And I think that in general, the lower expectations for them coming into the season kind of kept them under the radar for a while because, and that loss to FAMU early in the season. But that Tennessee Tech win was all right. And it wasn't until they put 69 on Delaware State that I think people really started paying attention because the next game was North Carolina Central. So you were already anticipating it and how it was falling off. So you realize these are the two best teams. And when North Carolina Central fell to South Carolina State, you had to crown them. You had to crown them. But yeah, this is a great team. And I can't wait to see what they do in the Celebration Bowl because they punched their ticket. But moving forward, speaking of postseason play, 2 conference champions in Division II HBCUs have punched their ticket. So let's break down how they got there and who they'll be facing as we wrap up today's episode of Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and FanDuel is the official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network. FanDuel. Now, if you're new to FanDuel, you put down a $5 bet, you win, and you get $150 back in bonus bets. That part is extremely simple. But then again, everything's extremely simple when it comes to FanDuel. You choose basketball, football. We had some really good games on Sunday. When I started recording this, the Cincinnati versus Charger game didn't look like it was going to be a good one. Now it's freaking tied. What in the heck is going on? I got to stop talking to y'all so I can go finish watching this game. But that's what you get. You get money in game. Things change. Before the game, you got futures, everything. You just need to go to FanDuel. If you felt like the Bengals would have made a comeback, you put some money down in the middle of the game and you make money back. $5 bet wins, new to FanDuel, $150 back in bonus bets. It's that simple. Go to FanDuel.com to make every moment more. Today's episode is also brought to you by Game Time. And Game Time is where I would go. If I were in, where are they playing? Cincinnati? No, they're in LA. If I was in Inglewood, I'm in the game. I'm there. They have a beautiful stadium. SoFi looks amazing on TV. If I ever go to California, I got to make sure that I make it a point if I'm in Southern California to get there. The only place I would go is to Game Time. But maybe sports events aren't your thing. You prefer to watch at home. Ballet, theater, comedy shows, concerts. They have everything on Game Time. So it's not just athletic events, because I understand some people prefer the comfort of their own home for that. But other things, like, for example, I almost went to a Martin Lawrence comedy show the other day in Dallas. Check Game Time immediately, but I had something else I had to do, so I wasn't able to make it. That being said, that's the only place I would tell you to go. Put in, download the app, use the code Locked On College, and get $20 off your first purchase. It's simple. Go to Game Time, download it today. You know what to do. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. Yesterday was Selection Sunday. Virginia Union and Miles College are in the Division II playoffs. Now, next week will be our FCS Selection Sunday. I think we may talk about the playoffs tomorrow. It depends on everything we have to get done. But the SIAC and the CIAA title games for this weekend, Miles won for the SIAC. And then for the CIAA, it was Virginia Union. I want to start off with Union because they played Virginia State for the second week in a row. Both of these games were rematches, but for Virginia State versus Virginia Union, it was only 7 days separating their last matchup. I knew that Jada Byers wouldn't be staying down for long. He had 106 yards last week against the Trojans. And I know for some people, oh, that's solid. That's cool. For Jada Byers, this is underwhelming. For Jada Byers, that is underwhelming for you to have 106 yards. This week, he made good on it and got 178 as he was a leader to bring Virginia Union into the CIAA championship in their 3rd straight playoff appearance, by the way. Virginia Union has had a lot of recent success, and that's something that we have to make sure that we identify. It's funny because this was the type of game I was looking for out of Byers. but it didn't translate to more points. They scored 28 in a loss. They only needed 17 this time to win. And it was the Jada Byers show. He had over 30 carries. I think he was a leader in receptions. He wasn't a leader in yards, but receptions. But I'd say a pass to somebody else was arguably my favorite play of the day. And that was from quarterback Mark Wright over to Reginald Vick. And to me, I thought it was a beautiful pass. I thought that it was a well-placed pass. And I thought it was one that at the moment was huge and ended up being the game winner. Even in the moment you said, oh, that was it. It didn't feel like the dagger at the time, but it felt like, okay, you needed that. And now it's going to put a lot of pressure on Virginia State. But this is Virginia Union's third straight trip to the playoffs. They're playing Wingate this year in the first round, the same team they played in 2021. So we'll see if they're able to get over the hump. Union hasn't been able to win a playoff game, but they've been there 3 straight years. Now for Miles, they dominated. I don't think there's much to say. They dominated the SIAC championship. For some reason, I've been struggling to say those 4 letters today. But, Gennaro Scott is a phenomenal back. He's so talented. He's such a good runner, right? Like just the way he runs, you want to continue watching that all day. But he didn't even have to do too much. He didn't get 100 yards. He had 15 carries for 80-something yards, 85, I think. They didn't ask him to do much. He scored touchdowns, but Javonte Leatherwood, he put in a pair. They really spread the rock. They spread the love, and they dominated Clark. They scored 23 unanswered to open up the game. I said, yeah, we can go get something to eat. We can go sit down and we can eat. No, I'm joking. I was going to go eat anyway, just in case you listen to this, babe. I didn't do that because the game was a blowout. Pinky promise. But no, seriously, guys. They dominated this matchup start to finish. And they dominated Clark last time. They intercepted David Wright 4 times this game. He's had a really struggle at the end of the year as far as protecting the ball. 5 interceptions against Morehouse, 4 interceptions this week. But they picked him off 4 times after picking him off 2 times before. But that's what happens. Miles had the most interceptions in the SIAC. Right? Like these things happen. Dominant defensively. Had a safety. Ran it up offensively. This is truly dominating is the word, and I feel like I'm beating a dead horse with the word, but so I'm gonna stop talking about it. But that's just the only word I can think of. And this week, they're gonna be facing Carson Newman. Carson Newman, top flight team. They have a pair of top 25 victories on the D2 level, one over Wingate, but they end up splitting that matchup with Wingate this year. So Wingate's playing Virginia Union, the team that Wingate beat just last week, and Carson Newman is going to be playing Miles. So this is going to be a really big test. It's going to be a really big test. Carson Newman kicked off their year with a win over a top 20 team, the 18th ranked team in the country at the time. So I can't wait to watch. Gennaro Scott has had a great day or great season. I think he's been a really talented running back whenever I'm able to catch him. I want to see what he's able to do in this game because that's the pressure I'm putting on him. Same with Jada Byers. I want my running backs from the HBCU level to show out in the Division II playoffs. We'll see what is able to happen, but we'll get into that. I almost had my alarm go off. We'll get into that next week. Tomorrow, Jackson State, Southern, they punched their ticket into the SWAC Championship game. Y'all know what that means. The Boombox Classic is the SWAC Championship for the second year in 3 seasons, I believe. But we'll get into that on tomorrow's episode. Come join me again on Tuesday. In the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.